My Hero Academia All's Justice is the third game in the One's Justice series, and the one that wraps up the My Hero Academia story with the biggest single-player offering the series has ever had and a complete overhaul to its combat system. That said, not every game mode is a smash hit, and it has a few performance issues that could end up being its downfall. My name's Globku, and this is my review for My Hero Academia All's Justice. All's Justice is now a 3v3 tag arena fighter, a big evolution from their previous formula, but the format isn't the only thing that evolved. The overall game feels snappier, a lot less floaty than its prequels, and they were able to accomplish this not only by making some actions quicker, but also by removing double jump and dash cancels from the game, as well as adding a fast descent option for every character. These changes make the game a lot more grounded than before, which significantly changes a lot of game plans even for returning characters. Speaking of characters, the game boasts an impressive 68 character roster at launch, 19 of which are brand new, but even returning characters got heavily adjusted. And the reason why the roster is so impressive is because every character is very unique. In a world filled with anime arena fighters, what makes All's Justice special is that characters don't follow a very strict formula, where once you learn how to play one of them, you kinda know how to play all of them. All's Justice takes a very different approach for every single character. Tokoyami, for example, is a stance character that plays completely different depending on where Dark Shadow is. The new All for One has slow attacks, but really big zoning tools that can be overwhelming if you give him space. Uraraka doesn't feel like she has anything special unless she has the space to summon rocks that she can spend on certain attacks, massively buffing her combo damage. There are a ton of gimmicks for you to learn in this game, and if that feels overwhelming, they do have the usual easy control schemes where you can just mash one button to make stuff happen. But to me, a lot of the beauty in this game comes from understanding what each one of these characters can do, and that's just something you don't get if you only play with auto combos. Speaking of combos, the removal of dash cancels has definitely made them a lot simpler and a lot shorter. If you're coming from One's Justice 2 or other arena fighters, you may feel a bit restricted by what a single character can do. But with the addition of tag, you can still build really long combos as long as you're willing to spend the resources. In fact, the tag system is absolutely wild and gives you a ton of freedom. Not only can you tag at any moment during a combo, it's also an incredible pressure tool, because something as simple as hitting the attack button once and tagging will have the main character finish the full combo before leaving the screen, giving your second character plenty of time to do whatever they want. Or if you're playing a zoner, you can absolutely confirm from a long range hit, as the next character will show up right in the opponent's face when tagged like this. It's an extremely powerful ability on offense, but also on defense, since you can tag while blocking an attack as well. And that way, you can punish an opponent who is simply trying to apply pressure. Because it's so powerful in both offense and defense, it becomes a battle for resources, making it very valuable for both players to keep all three characters alive. And on top of that, the game also has a new rising system. This is a unique power-up that's different for every character. It may enhance your quirks, open up new combo routes, apply full screen effects, completely transform your character. Well, there are 68 characters and everyone has a different rising, so I could go on forever. They really went wild with every character in Rising, giving them something that fits their quirks in the show, and also feels very powerful in the game. To balance this power, you become unable to tag out. A character in Rising has to play solo for its whole duration, but they also feel like a boss character most of the time, so it's very appropriate. Tag and Rising made me fall in love with this new game systems. It has made discovering even old characters something very enjoyable again. But at the same time, I often felt discouraged from doing too much. Using tag during combos seemed to heavily skill them, but even without tag, combos still have a hard damage cap. You can't deal more than 80% of a health bar on any given combo, a limit that was already present in One's Justice before. But now that we have 3 health bars instead of just 1, I thought they might let Touch of Death combos rock. On one hand, it feels like they want us to go absolutely wild with tag and rising, but on the other, they are discouraging us from doing so in combos given how aggressive the skilling can be. At the end of the day, that just changes the game plan a little bit. You're usually better off saving your resources for a 2 or 3 touch scenario rather than trying to go all out the first time you touch a character. But that's the combat system of All's Justice. In my opinion, a big upgrade from the previous games and definitely the main reason to check out the sequel. That said, to use these systems, you need some content. So let's talk game modes. All's Justice has 4 single-player game modes, an incredible offering. We have Story Mode, retelling the story of the final war, just like the anime, Team Up Mission, which is an original story set in a virtual space where Deku and 2 classmates can free roam and pick up side missions. Archive Battle, which is a collection of the main battles before the final arc. And Hero's Diary, which features some short stories between Class 1A members. All of these modes can be accessed via your phone or by walking around this central hub where there's actually some gameplay too. It's got battles, collectibles, and more. But let's start with the game modes that I loved, which were Story Mode and Archive Battle. These feel like more traditional story modes. It's a series of battles, often with unique conditions, and many stages that are exclusive to these modes. It's got some great CG cutscenes in between fights. They also have slideshows, which they make as active as possible, but it still has quite a few. But since we got a lot more proper cutscenes than previous games, it doesn't really feel like a slideshow festival. I loved how challenging these game modes were too. Archive Battle gives you a timer and encourages you to beat these encounters in under a minute. Getting these times was a lot of fun. And the final battles of Story Mode have some very unique gimmicks, like choosing which quirk buttons to give up on the battle against Shigaraki, for example. And then one of the toughest battles I have ever played in anime games. They really set out to make a proper challenge with this final all-for-one fight. It is awesome, and not everyone that gets this game is gonna be able to clear it. They went all out. But what they set up to be the main single-player game mode is Team Up Mission. It's by far the biggest and most complex game mode, but unfortunately, I thought this one was very inconsistent. In this game mode, Deku and the others are training for the final battle in a virtual reality space, but the training ends up being somewhat predictable. They've created missions using Deku's past battles as a basis, and so every mission you will have a different teacher playing the role of a villain, or they make AI versions of that same villain for you to fight against. Gameplay ends up being very repetitive because the story formula is also very repetitive, and the occasional race or side quest isn't really enough to break that pattern. In fact, side quests only make that pattern worse because they are randomized every time you start a new mission, which means there will be a lot of repeated quests. If you want to get all of those mission scores up to S rank, you will be repeating a lot of content. It feels like they knew this, so you can just choose to resolve any side quests with an assist character, but obtaining the assist characters is also a side quest that is also randomized, so you'll more than likely have to do the same ones multiple times. Even with the skip button, it feels like the game constantly needs you to slow down as it goes into a loading screen every time you do anything. And these are frequent and long enough to be very annoying. Not to mention some horrible performance issues on PlayStation 5, where changing the time of day completely freezes the game for a few seconds, or some missions that just run really poorly. On top of that, every time there's a combat encounter, enemies start with super armor, and you must first deplete their stamina bar to break it. It happens every single time, and it's not a fun gimmick to deal with. Now, it's not all bad. The game mode offers some fun group battles. They also have different free roaming abilities for all Class 1A members. Even if this world is not the most fun to explore, it's cool to live out the fantasy of a hero traversing the town to try to help someone. And there are some challenges that I really enjoyed outside the missions, especially the challenge gyms. This is where you'll have some extreme battle challenges with some very specific battle conditions, and they are really hard to clear. You also have some race courses specifically built for each character, which forced me to master movement with every one of them. These gyms prove that the developers know how to make some fun challenges with these systems, but unfortunately, that's all on the side. The main missions and the way the game mode is structured felt like it overstayed its welcome, which is a shame because it really is treated like the main single-player game mode. Not only because it's super long, but it's also where you unlock Archive Battle, as well as Hero's Diary, the final single-player game mode we need to talk about. Hero's Diary is a much simpler game mode with some short stories with the students. Gameplay is very minimal here. Sometimes you'll have a battle, sometimes you'll have a quick and easy platforming challenge. It's a very casual game mode with stories that I could only classify as filler quality. There's an impressive number of them about finding cats. I think it's a game mode that's only going to be appreciated by the really hardcore My Hero fans. For everyone else, this is a safe game mode to skip. Except for the Ida story. I thought that one was really funny, so I'd say it's worth checking out. But that's their single player offering. I thought overall, it's a very complete packaging. One that I wish many other anime games had too, but I do think they didn't quite stick the landing with their main game mode. Still, I had a lot of fun attempting those gyms and clearing both story mode and archive battle. That content alone has given me enough single player satisfaction. I also had a lot of fun trying out online versus. For versus mode, both online and offline, there are only 9 stages, which is odd given how many stages are playable in the single player modes. Maybe performance was an issue once again. I do remember some of those battles straight up running at 30 frames per second, but out of the 9 stages, I would say only 3 are actually fun to play in. They throw a lot of obstacles in a lot of these stages and different platform levels as well as uneven terrain, and all of that can cause issues and randomness during battles that are supposed to be as competitive as possible, especially in ranked matches. On top of that, the game's performance issues also extend to online and offline versus, even with this selection of versus stages. Some interactions between characters or rising effects will cause screen freezes and frame dips, sometimes during crucial moments, and that's always frustrating to deal with. Netcode is once again delay-based. Now, biking does make some of the best delay-based netcode I've ever experienced, but it is still delay-based netcode. My testing with this game was limited, but I did try some cross-region matches, and the netcode still felt really solid. I'm definitely more worried about the performance than the netcode this time around. Ranked also has some very odd choices in this game. First of all, your filters are very limited. You can only restrict matchmaking for region and whether you want to allow red players or not. They don't really go into detail on what red players are. I'm guessing it's rage quits, but I don't know. These limited filters matter a lot because once you enter matchmaking, you don't get to accept or reject an opponent based on their connection. It just starts the match no matter who it found. On top of that, neither you nor your opponent get to pick the stage. It is completely random every time. So you may end up in a stage that you don't like every single match. And you can also rematch after your first game is done, up to 4 matches in total, which means the set could very well just end in a 2-2 draw. Lots of questionable decisions here, but at the very least, it's a real ranked system now. After you clear those first few ranks, you do lose points for every loss. Unlike Was Justice 2, we actually have a real ranked system. The game also comes with lobbies, complete with spectator mode, but only the lobby leader can set players up to play. Like, the players that join just have to wait for the party leader to make all of the decisions, so even that side is a bit odd, but the lobbies are fully functional outside of that. I had no issues with them, even as people disconnected, as long as it wasn't the lobby leader, the lobby did not break. To prepare for these online matches, you're probably going to want to hit training mode, which is very similar to One's Justice 2, which means it's serviceable, but not the ideal training mode. I do appreciate the quick actions on the D-pad to clear assist cooldowns or to refill meters quickly without having to open the menus. The damage display, however, looks like a dev tool for some reason. It is really ugly. But that's the online. A few weird choices, but feels fully functional for the most part. I do worry about the performance side of things, and I already know I'm gonna curse my matches every time I get a stage I don't like, which is most of them actually. Last but not least, most of the unlockables in this game are all about customization, which you can take offline or online, so let's take a deep dive into it. There's a lot you can customize in All's Justice. That said, if you're expecting the level of customization that One's Justice used to offer, that has unfortunately been cut in favor of things that I don't think players will value as much. For instance, you can customize your HUD, changing the way your health bars look, as well as equip some emblems to put on the side of the screen, and a phrase that goes on top of your name that you can also customize. This would be fine for me if it stayed on the player that picked those options, but you have to live with your opponent's choices too. And it's not just that I like a cleaner HUD, some of these health bars are so noisy that they actually make certain elements harder to see. Like this icon that Stain has under his health bar when he's in Rising, it becomes really hard to spot at a glance when playing against this opponent. When it comes to characters, they now have a bunch of preset outfits you can pick, and I'd say there's a good variety of colors and styles per character. Most of the costumes you'd want are in-game, like pre-amputee Mirko, the student outfit, Lady Nagant's long hairstyle. I didn't spot Vigilante Deku, and that's one big omission, and it is especially odd since you can actually play with it during Archive Battle, and it was a free outfit during One's Justice 2. But other than that, you can customize each character's pose during the intro and victory screens, some voice lines, and even what their banner looks like when you pick them as a part of your team. I also like how this game remembers your control preferences for each character once you pick them once. Unfortunately, it does not save those preferences once the game is restarted. As someone who doesn't play with default controls, this means that I have to change my preferences every time I boot up the game on every character that I decide to play with during that session. An easy way to circumvent this would be having a setting in the options menu where you can set what the default controls are for every character. I like playing with manual controls on hold style, and it's honestly really annoying having to change this on every character every time I boot up the game. While in the options menu, it is still very weird that turning down the music slider does not completely turn off the music. It always stays present, just at a lower volume, and and I always found that odd. It was also in the previous games. I don't know why they're still doing this. Finally, the game comes with full English and Japanese voiceovers, and a lot of this game is completely voiced. I did try both options over the course of my playthrough, and I really enjoyed both versions. With that said, it's time to score this game. If you're new here, we use letters for our scores from F, which is really bad, to A, which is really good, and this is my score for My Hero Academia: All's Justice.
Was I able to save you?
It's the best One's Justice game by far. It has a really solid single player offering that many anime games wish they had. Shame the centerpiece isn't as good as it needed to be to fully deliver, but every game mode put together makes a really awesome package for My Hero fans. I love the changes to the combat system, even with my issues with the hard scaling limits, and the roster is one of the most impressive I've ever seen in any anime game. 68 characters, all with incredibly unique playstyles. Very few anime games can pull that off. That said, it has some weird decisions surrounding online play and ranked, which are gonna make this a frustrating game to grind, thanks to the limited matchmaking settings and the random stage selection, given how many stages are actually bad for competitive play. But the biggest issue by far is the performance issues on PlayStation, which is usually the most active platform. Once players really learn how to play this game and they start pressing more buttons, we're gonna see frame dips more and more often, and that may very well be this game's downfall. But that's my review for My Hero Academia: All's Justice. I've got a lot more content coming out in the next few days, including a new daily series, a big launch tournament next week, and of course DLC coverage once that gets announced. So for all things All's Justice, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. And as always, thank you very much for watching. My name's Globku, and I'll see you next time. Bye.